The old Patterson estate had seen better days. Once the heart of the town's social life, its grand ballroom now showed only fading paint, dusty chandeliers, and floorboards that groaned at the slightest weight. When Addison Miller was hired to restore its former glory, she felt more than cautious excitement. She felt a quiet determination. Addison specialized in subtle transformations, soft neutral palettes, delicate moldings, and gentle decorative touches that enhanced a space's soul rather than overpowering it. She had a resolute way of working, so silent and calm that her previous clients had often mused they barely noticed her presence until she revealed something remarkable. She arrived at the estate early one morning, the sun caught between the tall tree branches, casting discreet patches of light on the weathered steps. A pair of old wrought iron doors separated her from the grandeur inside. Addison pressed her hand against the iron and wondered if the place could truly rise to its former eminence. Determined to revitalize its neglected beauty, she thought of every detail she would painstakingly touch: the swirling crown moldings, the chipped murals, even the dusty floor inlays that once fascinated countless dancing feet. The caretaker, a nodding gentleman wearing suspenders, handed Addison the large set of keys. The metal pieces jangled with a gentle clang that echoed in the foyer. She smiled softly, curving her lips just enough to communicate gratitude without speaking. That was Addison, polite, well-mannered, yet reserved. She was uncertain she wanted to manage this colossal restoration alone, but her thorough methods and genuine passion for design led her here. Turning the key in the lock, she pushed open the doors and stepped inside, letting the musty air roll past her in a bittersweet welcome. She crossed the threshold into the ballroom. The swirling dust instantly highlighted the neglected splendor. She could almost see the ghosts of swirling skirts and hear the faint echoes of violins. This was to be her project, to give new life to something that had gone silent. Little did she know, a substantial part of that renewal would come from a flamboyant force quite unlike anything she had ever known. Moments later, she heard a distant hum of an engine purr to a stop outside. Then came the rumble of something being unloaded, accompanied by a theatrical voice that trilled down the foyer. Addison, in the middle of mentally dissecting the elaborate ceiling, spun around to see who had arrived. Silhouetted in the doorway stood a sharply dressed man in a purple blazer and bright turquoise trousers, flanked by a rolling luggage trunk plastered with travel stickers. He removed his sunglasses with a flourish, revealing a broad grin that seemed to announce both joy and mischief. "Bonsoir," he called out, although it was nowhere near evening. His voice carried an unmistakable ring of confidence. "Jasper St. Clair, at your service." He introduced himself with a dramatic bow. Addison blinked, uncertain if she was dealing with a genuine eccentric or if this was some act. At times, she forgot that restoring the Patterson estate was part of a larger event. An upcoming charity gala was to be held in the newly renovated ballroom, and it made sense that someone with flair would be enlisted as the party planner. Never, in her quietest daydreams, had she imagined someone this extroverted. Jasper swept into the ballroom, swiftly analyzing its trodden surfaces and tarnished mirrors. "What a canvas," he declared, spouting whimsical phrases about twinkling lights and feather centerpieces before turning to Addison. "You must be Addison. I've heard wonderful things, and from what I see, you've got quite the blank slate to work with. Splendid." He extended a hand, that broad grin lighting up his face. Addison, still baffled by his hyper energy, placed her slim hand in his. She offered a soft greeting, and he responded with a grand double air kiss near her cheeks, leaving her slightly flustered. "I'm delighted to work together," he went on, clasping his hands. "You're the final puzzle piece, the interior genius, right? I suspect we'll make magic happen here." Addison's cheeks warmed at his praise, though the word magic wasn't quite in her everyday vocabulary. She was used to nuances, to a palette of soft undertones rather than flamboyant brushstrokes. But there was something strangely compelling about Jasper's effervescent energy, like stepping into sunshine after a week of overcast skies. She nodded politely, feeling the faint thrill of a challenge. With the two of them sharing stewardship over this transformation, she braced herself for endless color swatches, lively discussions, and unexpectedly strong opinions from both sides. The next day began with Addison perched on a tall wooden ladder, carefully inspecting the intricately carved arches along the ballroom walls. She jotted down notes in her sketchbook, her pencil gliding quietly across the page. She was deep in thought when the sound of upbeat music came surging through the open double doors. Jasper arrived, wearing headphones around his neck, phone in hand, humming a lively tune as if the space were already brimming with dancers. His relentless enthusiasm wired the atmosphere. Addison was, by nature, measured and exact. Jasper, on the other hand, appeared to unleash a bursting rainbow inside every room he entered. While she consulted her sketches, Jasper unfurled enormous mood boards he had pinned with bright, bold swatches. Neon pinks, deep royal blues, glittering golds, photos of trapeze artists, confetti cannons, and balloon installations. Addison stared at the montage, trying her best to keep her calm. The scale of his ideas seemed nearly impossible, like trying to stage a circus in an aging cathedral. And yet, the more he spoke about the event, the easier it was to see why clients adored him. His grand visions and unstoppable optimism were contagious. It reminded Addison of a day not so long ago when she had considered designing children's reading nooks, bright, imaginative spaces that might inspire creativity. However, Addison's finishing style had always been subdued. Jasper's flamboyant approach both intrigued and unsettled her. Yet she decided to keep an open mind and studied his glittering pictures for a glimmer of synergy. Soon, they entered a spirited conversation about color schemes. Jasper insisted on bold plum for the drapes to complement the space. She suggested a more subdued eggplant. He campaigned for sequin table runners. She floated an idea for a subtler shimmer. Back and forth they went, and what initially felt like a struggle gradually evolved into a game of creative push and pull. In the midst of debating about the central chandelier, Addison leaning towards refurbishing the vintage fixture, Jasper imagining an entirely new contraption of crystals and LED lights, Addison paused. She found herself enjoying his bounding energy more than expected. Even in disagreement, Jasper's bright laughter and dramatic flamboyance had begun wearing away her usual reserve, if only a fraction. With each compromise they struck, Addison realized that they were forging a partnership built on balancing extremes. The plan was forming, designs taking shape, and despite the friction, she felt a spark of exhilaration with every idea they combined. By the end of the week, Addison had found a curious routine with Jasper. Mornings were hers, moments of calm drafting, methodical measurements, quiet craftsmanship along the baseboards of the ballroom. Then, by midday, Jasper breezed in with boxes of fabrics, emails from florists demanding color palettes, and proposals from caterers. He'd whirl around the place, singing a half-improvised show tune while Addison tried not to smile at his comedic flamboyance. During lunch breaks, Addison would often retreat to a secluded corner of the estate's gardens, nibbling on a sandwich while she sketched possible enhancements. One afternoon, to her surprise, Jasper showed up at her bench. "Hey there, darlin'," he teased gently. "Mind if I join you?" She waved him to sit, uncertain about what conversation might follow. If alone, Addison might relish the hush of rustling leaves, but it seemed Jasper preferred filling silences with exuberant chatter. She realized quickly that Jasper wasn't just about glitter and fabulousness. He carried stories with him, heartfelt and full of passion. He detailed how he'd grown up in a big family and always yearned to stand out from a crowd of siblings. Later, traveling around Europe, planning secret pop-up parties, had taught him the value of entertaining with flair. He wanted to bring people together in experiences so dazzling they forgot their troubles for the night. Curious himself, he asked her about her calm devotion to design. In halting murmurs, Addison confessed that her reserved nature never made her the life of the party. She had always found solace in architecture magazines and decorative outlines. Transforming worn spaces into timeless sanctuaries was the closest thing to a calling she'd ever known. Jasper listened, surprisingly attentive, compliments rolling off his tongue about her talents and her bright eyes whenever she spoke about the details of molding designs. After that chat, Addison found herself looking forward to their lunch breaks. She discovered that Jasper's presence didn't always have to be oppressive or overshadowing. He could also be a warm, reassuring source of light. They shared visions and inspirations, even if they expressed them differently. Whenever she noticed him approaching, Addison found her heart beating a little faster. This feeling was new and slightly unsettling, yet not entirely unwelcome. But not every day was a bed of roses. As the renovation advanced, they encountered stubborn problems. The old floorboards in a quarter of the ballroom needed complete replacement. Dampness had seeped in over the years, warping the wood beyond repair. The once magnificent murals on the high walls showed signs of hidden mold that demanded delicate restoration from expert conservators. The tight timeline meant everything needed to happen in rapid succession, leaving Addison with hardly a moment to breathe. Jasper, for all his charm, grew restless each time completion dates threatened to shift. "My dear, the caterers are frantic. We promised them a final head count 2 weeks from now," he exclaimed, half in panic, half in melodrama. Addison, always purposeful in her decisions, struggled to maintain calm amidst voices asking for instant answers. More than a few times, she snapped under pressure, surprising even herself. "I know," she'd say firmly, "but if we don't restore the foundation correctly, the entire place will suffer. Please, just give me time." Their synergy, once budding, met friction as deadlines approached. Addison's carefully laid plans collided with Jasper's grand illusions of a perfect event. They found it harder to align bold decorative bursts with the demands of architectural integrity. Arguments bubbled to the surface, sometimes over trivial details: sequin density, floral arrangements, the shapes of LED fixtures overhead, or the sound system's size. She caught herself longing for the quiet hush of her drafting studio. More than once, Jasper stormed out, muttering about how Addison was quashing his vision of brilliance. But even in their worst spats, Addison sensed an underlying sincerity she respected. He didn't want the space ruined any more than she did. He just had a different approach. Late one evening, after they parted ways on an argument, Addison lingered in the empty ballroom. Something told her to trust the synergy they had cultivated. Quietly, she stroked the dusty walls and whispered her vow to the battered floors. She would find a way to satisfy both the grandeur of Jasper's lavish dreams and the gentle heritage the building needed to preserve. 3 days before their final deadline, Addison and Jasper found themselves standing side by side in the echoing expanse of the ballroom. The tarps were all down, the scaffolding removed. The carefully synchronized efforts were beginning to show their beauty. New gilded sconces sparkled along the walls, reflecting off a lovingly restored ceiling mural. Thanks to Addison's careful contributions, the colors complemented the original architecture. Jasper's signature flair glimmered in the form of luxurious draperies that cascaded down from the tall windows in vibrant jewel tones, capturing the essence of a grand gala. Exhausted, the two of them watched as a team of movers delivered the carefully curated pieces: an elegant baby grand piano for the corner, plush seating arrangements, table linens that glowed under the warm light. Addison, disheveled in paint-splattered overalls, glanced at Jasper in his immaculate floral print shirt. Despite his outward glamour, she could see signs of fatigue in the crease of his brow. He beamed at her with both excitement and relief. "Addie," he said softly, using a nickname he'd begun employing more frequently, "this is breathtaking." She hummed in agreement, letting her gaze pan slowly over the dramatic transformation. She recalled the first day they'd walked in, dust swirling, floors creaking, her heart skipping from self-doubt. Now they stood on a polished surface that gleamed, a reflection of their combined efforts. The overhead chandelier had undergone a creative merge of old and new. It retained the original wrought iron skeleton, but now boasted twinkling, modern crystals and subtle LED accent lights that, to Addison, symbolized the precarious union of her gentle approach and Jasper's unabashed style. Encouraged by the moment, Jasper took a step closer. He gestured for her to join him near the large window. Outside stretched rose gardens and the faint outline of a hedge maze. "We did it," he murmured. "We actually pulled this off." Addison found herself smiling fully, something that rarely happened without a strenuous, direct prompt. They gazed at one another with a silent realization of how much trust, compromise, and passion had led them here. The closeness felt electric, laden with unspoken possibilities, but Addison simply let the moment rest on a warm hush. Neither turned away. On the evening of the gala, Addison arrived dressed in a simple floor-length gown of midnight blue. She hesitated before stepping from her parked car, inhaling a slow breath to quell her nervousness. The Patterson estate was already luminously decorated outside, Jasper's signature purple lights highlighting the stone. It took her a moment to gather the courage to enter. She felt more comfortable among paintbrushes and rulers, but tonight she was a guest celebrating their achievement. When she finally entered the ballroom, her heart fluttered. The transformation was even more awe-inspiring, with the hush of anticipation and the twinkling glow of overhead fixtures. Elegant couples drifted across the floor, the scent of roses and candle wax permeating the air. Soft music floated from the baby grand in the corner, matching the graceful swirl of long gowns. Addison spotted Jasper flitting amid the attendees, greeting each with a grand flourish, blowing kisses to familiar faces, and distributing compliments like carnival prizes. More than once, Addison caught his eye from across the room, yet each time someone else would swoop in, demanding attention. She occupied herself near an ornate column, receiving occasional praise from guests who recognized her role in the makeover. Still, she felt an undercurrent of anticipation humming beneath her polite smiles. Every so often, she glimpsed Jasper weaving through the crowd, flamboyant as always, but scanning until his gaze locked with hers. She felt a rush of warmth each time he looked her way. Eventually, as the music reached a murmuring lull, he excused himself from a circle of donors. Meeting Addison's eyes, he approached quietly, an unusual approach for the unstoppable party planner. His tuxedo jacket shone with swirling embroidered patterns that caught the light in mesmerizing ways. She found herself noticing the faint dusting of gold glitter on his lapels, a playful accent that seemed entirely fitting. He reached for her hand and leaned in, as if they were old friends sharing a secret. The hush between them felt profound. "Dance with me," he whispered, a mischievous smile spreading across his lips. Addison might have retreated. Her first instinct was to fear the spotlight, but she'd seen what wonders could happen when she broke her usual habits, forging new territory with this vibrant soul. So she placed her hand gently in his, nodding just enough to convey her assent. The music began anew in melodic waves, and Jasper guided Addison onto the polished floor. They glided together in slow, measured steps, each finding the other's rhythm. His warm hand on her waist and the reassuring press of his fingertips made her pulse flutter. Their earlier creative tug-of-war now dissolved into graceful collaboration, as if the cadences of the music carried them into a world free from deadlines and differences. Addison felt her cheeks flush when Jasper leaned closer, and for a moment she let herself rest in the swirl of the dance. "You look radiant," he murmured over the gentle melody. Addison's eyes flickered up to meet his. Her reserved nature might have prompted her to look away, but she held his gaze this time. A tiny surge of courage coursed through her. She thanked him quietly, letting the closeness linger. Each turn unveiled the passion they'd discovered, through artful compromise. No words necessary to express what brewed between them. With each half step, Addison realized there was a remarkable grace in letting yourself be swept up, so long as you trusted the arms holding you. When the piece ended, the clinking of champagne glasses and polite applause filled the air. Jasper, still cradling her hand, offered a whisper, "Let's step outside." Together they stepped through a side entrance onto a small terrace that overlooked the garden. Cooler greeted them, and the distant sound of the gala's hum pulsed behind them like a heartbeat. Moonlight lit the garden path, dancing on the trimmed hedges. Addison leaned against the railing, hugging her arms as a gentle breeze caressed her skin. He turned to her, the flamboyant bravado taking a back seat to something more genuine. "You know," he began, voice steady, "I never expected to meet someone so different from me, yet so complimentary. All those arguments, all those compromises, they were worth it for this moment." He paused, a slight vulnerability creeping into his expression. "You always surprise me with your quiet confidence. It's beautiful." Addison felt her heart pound against her ribs. She hadn't anticipated the swirl of emotion simmering under the surface of their professional relationship. Yet here they were, gazing into his warm eyes. She realized how drawn she'd become to the spark he carried wherever he went. She breathed in, letting the crisp night air steady her. "You remind me," she said softly, "that sometimes daring to be bold can open a world of possibilities." Jasper's lips curved into a tender smile, his usual brilliant grin tempered by sincerity. The faint echo of the party music floated through the night, swirling around them like an affirmation of their bond. Slowly, he reached out, letting his fingers trail against hers. Addison felt the hush spin out, carved around them like a private waltz. The next moment unfolded in a rush of intimacy, a gentle tilt of heads, shared breath, and then the press of a soft, lingering kiss beneath the silver glow of the moon. When they pulled apart, Addison's cheeks glowed, and Jasper's gaze brimmed with wonder. The swirl of voices and distant laughter beckoned them back inside. But they lingered a while longer, savoring this new territory that had blossomed between them. Eventually, they made their way back into the ballroom, where the ambiance seemed fresh and filled with promise. Looking around, Addison felt a surge of pride in their achievements and an equally potent, wholly unexpected swell of hope for what might come next. As the evening progressed, they mingled with guests, participated in toasts, and answered questions about the stunning refurbishment. Addison found that standing next to Jasper, she was never overshadowed, but instead uplifted by his unbridled energy. Whenever she felt a twinge of shyness, she'd catch his eye, and his reassuring nod or teasing wink reminded her she wasn't alone. Toward the night's end, after the guests departed in a flurry of compliments and leftover confetti, the two of them wandered through the now quiet ballroom, shoes clicking softly on the glossy floor. The grandeur they had created in tandem felt like a testament to the possibilities of balancing quiet grace with vivid zest. Their project may have culminated in the triumphant gala, but Addison suspected the part of their journey that mattered most was just beginning. She stood next to Jasper in the vacant, echoing space, noticing how, even in silence, they felt attuned to one another's presence. "I've been so focused on making opening night perfect," Jasper confessed, sliding his hands into his pockets. "I'm almost sad it's over." Addison nodded. She understood that although the crisp ring of champagne glasses might fade, something more enduring was taking shape. Standing amid the tapestry of light and shadow, Addison pursed her lips into a small but genuine smile. "It doesn't have to be over," she said, permitting herself a flash of daring. "There's more to do, more places to design, more celebrations to plan." The suggestion shimmered between them, an invitation and a promise. Jasper took a step closer, threading his hand through hers. Despite all her quiet reflection, Addison's heart soared in that moment. Plans would change, new challenges would arise, and they would inevitably bicker over details in the future. But beneath it all, a new foundation was in place, one that felt sturdy enough to welcome any extravagance or subtlety. Arm in arm, they left the ballroom behind, carrying with them a heady mixture of relief, satisfaction, and a stirring love that was as dazzling as it was unexpected. Outside, the moon had dipped below the highest gables of the Patterson estate, and only a warm hush fell over the wide lawns. Edison paused at the top of the steps, surveying the building's majestic silhouette. How many nights had it stood silent and empty? And how remarkable that a grand event had reawakened its walls to music and laughter, culminating in an enchanting evening that left them both changed. She gazed at Jasper by her side, his flamboyant nature still glinting in the late hour starlight, and felt a comforting sense of balance brimming inside her soul. In an unspoken agreement, they turned away from the estate hand in hand, stepping confidently into whatever came next.